Hi everybody, I'm glad that you're going to be joining us on this first book study that we're going to be doing together for Carrollton United Methodist Church. I'm excited about this study, and I'm hoping that this will be the first of several book studies that we'll do in this format. This is kind of a trial run for us. We've never done a study like this before, but we see it as an opportunity to reach out to people who can't work a normal service of Bible study or book study into their schedules. And this will still let you have discussion with your fellow church members on the material that you're reading, so we're hoping this will be successful. This first book we've chosen to study together is called I Am a Church Member by Thomas S. Rainer. He's one of the more prominent and well-known authors in the field of congregational studies as well as theology, and so we're looking forward to hearing from him and studying with you together. This book was chosen by the church health team to be the first because I think it deals with some of the issues that face our church. And I don't mean that no one in our church knows how to be a church member. I mean that we have so many new families and so many new Christians who are coming into our congregation that sometimes there's not enough knowledge that's gained or been able to been given to talk about what it means to be a member of a church. And all of us could always use a refresher on what God's Word says about being a member of His church. And so I think Dr. Rainer does a great job of discussing that in this book, and I'm looking forward to going through it with you together. This study, just as a brief introduction, will always be formatted the same, and all of our future studies will be formatted like this. You get a video from me with a little introduction to the module that's been created for you to start with. There'll be a discussion briefly from me about the material, and then some questions for you to think about and to blog about on the site, which you've already accessed. So for this book, you'll always come back to this website. You'll always come to this book discussion tab. You'll watch the video first, and then after you've done your reading, you'll go in here and hit a reply or a comment, and then you'll add your comments. I'm going to structure it a little tighter for our first book study because this is the first time we've done this. But my hope is that as we continue through these studies, our conversations can be more loose and fluid, and that will give us an opportunity to really dig deep into what we're thinking about the material. So I'm looking forward to that. For this first module of this first book, we're going to be doing the introduction, the first chapter, and the second chapter. Just for format, the goal is for you to read the introduction and those two chapters, the first and second, by Wednesday. And then sometime Wednesday evening, post your initial comments. So this study begins here on Sunday, 4/12, and then we will post our initial comments by the following Wednesday. And I'm hoping that in that time you'll have enough time to read and gather up some good information to talk to us about. And then later on in this video, I'll give you the questions that I want you to answer. Some things to think of as you're reading through the material, and I'll go through each piece. In the introduction, you're going to hear the story of Liam and Michael. They are two friends that came into the church together, began studying together, but Liam had a moment where he became disillusioned with the church. And you're going to read through his story, and you're going to hear words, and you're going to hear excuses and things that I guarantee you've heard before. Maybe you've even said some of them before. And then Michael's response back, their discussion back and forth, really starts to define what it means to be a church member and the perspectives that are out there. So pay close attention to their story in the introduction. Chapter 1 of this book is called I Will Be a Functioning Church Member. I really like the discussion that being a church member is an active thing. It's not just about getting your butt in a seat on Sunday, and it's not just about getting your way, which I think is a very powerful message. So pay attention to those things particularly as they kind of discuss the country club metaphor of the understanding of what a church is. A lot of us think that churches are like country clubs where we pay our dues, which are our tithes, and then we are to get our way or to get our response because we've paid to do these things. So a lot of interesting scriptural references that kind of come back that. So pay attention to that. On page 18, and this will be the same with all of the chapters, but on page 18, which is the end of chapter 1, there's your first pledge. And so if you'll grab your book and turn to that, after you read the material, you're going to come to this, and it's asking you to give a response. I won't read through this because I want you to take the time to hear the material first and then do this. But this pledge is kind of your response to the material for yourself. I'm not going to see this. No one else in the church is going to see this. But the goal for you is to read through the material and in some way be inspired to make a change in your own life. And that will come in the way of this pledge that comes. And each of the chapters have one. So when you've read through this chapter and when you think that you're ready to make that kind of commitment to yourself personally between you and God, sign your name on that line. And then live the words that are in that pledge. And that will be for all of the chapters. To guide our discussion for chapter 1, I'd like us all to answer question 1 on page 19. I'm going to read that to you now. And that's explain how country club membership and church membership are so different. Give scriptural references to support the differences in church membership. So start your discussion with that question, at least for chapter 1, and then pick one of the other questions on 19 and answer that as well. If people use the same question, it's not that big a deal, and we'll drive our conversation one way or the other. But I would like us all to at least start with question 1 on page 19. Chapter 2 is called I Will Be a Unifying Church Member. And I really enjoyed this chapter because it touches on some things we don't really like to talk about. And that's how church members can either create unity or destruction within the congregations of which they're in. And I'll leave it at that as you kind of read through, but this talks a lot about negative talk, about gossip, about not living up to people's expectations. And it reminds us that no one is perfect. So keep those things in mind as you read through chapter 2. The discussion questions, again, first there's the pledge on page 30. This will be the second pledge. Each of these chapters will have one. When you're ready to sign those lines and make that commitment, please do that. The question I would like all of us to address for chapter 2 is actually question 5 on page 31. It says, read all of 1 Corinthians 13. Paul wrote the love chapter to the church at Corinth where problems with unity were pervasive. What does this chapter mean for church members today? Explain as you go through each verse. So start your discussion for chapter 2 with question 5, and then pick any of the other questions 1 through 4 to continue your discussion. So again, my hope is that by Wednesday you've read the material, and then you can answer these questions that I proposed for each of the chapters. And then what will happen is that Thursday through Saturday, and probably leading into Sunday, I will respond back to you and several others. I'm hoping that each of you will respond to each other. You don't have to just wait for my comments. If someone says something that you feel you can respond to or you'd like to respond to, go ahead and do that. I think there should be a level of comfort in being able to do this online because you don't have to worry about someone being nervous about your comments. We're all speaking in love and we're all speaking together. And you don't have to stand in front of anybody or raise your hand to say those things. You just take your turn and respond. And again, I will be responding, and I know several of the other members of the church health team will be responding as well. And I hope this creates a really good discussion for us that will grow our church spiritually and in numbers as well. But ultimately that will help us learn what it means to be a member of God's church. So good luck in your reading. I look forward to interacting with you over the next coming days. If you do have questions about anything that you read that you'd rather not post on the blog, feel free to text me or call me. And I'll address those. But I think that the material lends itself to good discussion, and so I'm looking forward to doing that with you. Take care for now. I look forward to it, and I'll talk to you all soon.